Going on, everybody? It's your host, Don't Let the Connect, and I had to come over here and give you a quick PSA. As you get ready to listen to this episode, there's some things that you need to know. The first being that there are two versions of the same topic I'm about to relay. One instance, I was in a environment where I didn't necessarily feel comfortable, so I didn't really feel confident in the footage. So I re-recorded, and that's what you're gonna listen to on the second part. And there were two different types of conversations about the same thing, so I figured might as well keep it. So if you are going to commit to listening, just know that there's gonna be a transition. And I appreciate you in advance. Peace. My name is Dunlap the Connect, and welcome to another episode of the Philosophy of Chillin. As you can see, there is a different atmosphere around me, and essentially, I am here to discuss a topic that can be very complex and fueling at the same time. With that being said, today I wanted to talk to you all about how to get through the phase of processing. Um, for me, it's been a difficult journey because processing is intertwined with so many things, whether it be from an external perspective. You can go and itemize relationships, government, politics, shoot, science. It's so many things. And they're in front of us every single day. Shoot, the random encounter that you had with somebody on the street. You gotta process what the fuck they just said to you. Cause what did you just say to me? You feel me? And it's those little intricacies along in compilation with the larger spectrum of issues that seem to pile onto you. And they're daunting to get through because the reaction time is almost nothing. Like, if you are not actively taking time to be aware of your response and the steps that you take to progress to those points of escalation, and most definitely to the main point of processing, because you process before you do. One doesn't commit to an action without having processed some type of feeling or emotion or physical encounter or what have you. Even if it's not to that external degree, even if it's something internal that you feel coming off of somebody else, that's processing. Because what is that energy really trying to tell you? And from what you're evaluating, how does that process reflect upon what's important to you?
And for me, I had to ask myself these questions because processing is a large thing. And in experiencing the levels that I go through, especially, well, not just what they do to me, but especially how it influences other people, I've had to learn to grow in practicing the intentionality to address something for what is actually happening and looking at it from my perspective, then looking at the situation externally beyond me for what it is in general. And then taking those aspects and trying to remind myself of the vision that I'm trying to execute with my own standards. And for, for different people, that means different things because your standard may not be the same as mine. So your process time may be shorter or longer depending on the time. And in whatever situation someone finds themselves to be, I really think, not I think, what I have experienced and what I have learned from is that it's harder to slow down one's reaction when you're still in the middle of processing. Even when you think you're done or when you have to be done, how are we evaluating what that is actually doing to our mental, physical, and spiritual bodies? And that's the key point that I'm trying to make today. And what I feel like I have to highlight in what I'm saying. Because when I thought about the topic of processing, I meant it in a way in which it could apply to anything. And what I experienced today in trying to record this very thing was another reminder of a real example of processing. It's the things, not even the things, it's the aspects and elements that you don't foresee. And sometimes, even when you have everything planned out to a T, you're even processing the influences that structure the way in which you try to respond. And in order to get your own version of understanding not just yourself, but who you are against everyone else, you have to understand that essentially every element that you involve in your stage of processing has ties back to what you understand is also true for you. So, in evaluating, okay, what do I do? let's talk about how your action is in direct correlation to the standard that you're expecting yourself to execute. So break down all of those elements to figure out what are the actual steps that you want to take that are healthy for you. What I experienced today was a reminder that even though you can put a reflection to yourself and know how you respond to certain things and how that affects you externally, can come off as a completely different version of the personality you're building. So you have to address both. And I say this because I've had to do a lot of processing, and I know other people have too, especially in regards to the environment internally and externally that everyone is dealing with presently. It's a lot, and people have their routines on how they are comfortable dealing with things, but n- not but. And because of that, one of my goals is to be able to expose that. Where is the comfortability? Because at the end of the day, time is ticking. And from what not just we are doing presently, but as a human race, because even titles have become alienating. As a human race, after generations of being where we are now, what predicament are we curating that has not already been foretold in the patterns? And that's because of the way we've been processing. I sometimes feel as if I have to rush things, and I know that has to be a shared commonality because in the process that I recognize to be true, it's been more so about the vision of what I'm trying to get to. So if you are processing things around you and you know one of the keys can be changing your comfortability just slightly to something with alignment to the better version of yourself that you want to be, even if it is tough after you've come down the high of the emotion, how is it that you are continuing with your action? How are the two translating? Because what we as a human race have done thus far is, it's a little disappointing. A little is an exaggerated word. And there's nothing that I can do outside of doing what I know the divine God has tasked me with doing. Show up where I'm supposed to show up. There are some people that are not fully processing the fact that maybe you wanted to be there, but you weren't supposed to. Maybe you didn't want to do something and were meant to stand your ground in performing an action that made the pattern deviate from what has been previously accepted before. But only you can know that. And all I'm saying is just stay true to what God is telling you to do and put that in the process that you have in justifying how you respond to whatever situation you're a part of. That's the only way through. No matter how many times I try to get mad, upset, cry, it don't matter how you respond. Some people even fight. Shit. I can too. It's a good outlet for sure. But at the end of the day, even when all the emotions, when the situation has subsided, what have you, there's an understanding that it was either supposed to happen because God let it, or you put yourself in a situation that now you have to actively walk and live the consequences. But that doesn't mean you have to stay in the same intentionality that started the consequence originally. Because at the end of the day, you not doing or you not involving that in your process, in one's process, it will be a continuation of patterns or mistakes that have happened previously. And for people to say this is 2025, you could have fooled me. Yes, there's progress, but it needs to happen in a mass of unity, and that can only happen individually. It don't even matter if you agree or disagree. Agree to disagree. Then move forward on this commonality that's progressing and evolving this humanity. Yes, one's feelings are valid. And this is not to say one's emotions are invalid. This is to say, in your stage of processing and making sure you're progressing as you still go through the ups and downs of experiencing those different stages as they come and materialize themselves to you, you have to understand this to be true too. Yes, your feelings are valid. Yes, you also have to digest and understand what they mean and where they are leading you. But you have to involve three that gives you a reflection of the action that you could do and take a chance on the one that makes you uncomfortable because it's good for you, because it's in alignment with what God asks you to, not just because your emotions or what you want or have been told or influenced to understand to be true is presented to you. I don't know if this made any sense, but this is all I have to say. And this is all that I was given to convey. And I hope something helped in learning, not even learning, just inciting questions internally that challenge you to think about how you actively process what happens to you and decide the actions that you choose. So, as y'all know, I could really sit here all day and talk to y'all and chop it up, what have you. But I gotta go, and I know you do too.
Before you go, before you click off, I just want you to know that the episode is not over. This is the transition into the second recording for the same topic that we've been discussing. So, if you want to continue, this is just your quick PSA to let you know that we're transitioning into the second part of this episode. Thank you for listening in advance. Welcome back to the Philosophy of Chillin. I'm your host, Dylan to Connect, and we're back with another episode. I seem more hesitant, or maybe the equal amount of hesitant, because today's topic is gonna go through processing, and I've kind of went through this topic before, but I always try to have it to where um, I provide a take on the topic that I may share from different perspectives, one including just my own, because I know that when I'm around other people, like, yes, I will listen, and then, sometimes respond, but that sometimes is really dependent on what that environment is and what I feel like I have to entail, um, either to the person or to the group or what have you. And sometimes that moment comes far and in between, um, because I'm always processing what is being digested around me. So honestly, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go through processing, because honestly and truthfully, I've been doing, I've been cycling back in this stage of development, and it's not necessarily to understand the vision, but it's really to acknowledge and address the duality of living your dreams in reality. And honestly, there's a lot of contemplation that is involved, to where you have to process the aspects of the situation that influence your own action. And I'm specifically talking about internally, but there's elements to where you have to consider what's happening externally as well. And I wanted to kind of dive into that because at the end of the day, we have to be open to the processing of the in-between space. And that in-between space, if you're not able to get out of it in alignment with your purpose or a developing understanding of how you and your higher powers are aligned and how you can tell if your responses are actually divine. And that in between processing is not easy. It's literally moments where you have to be able to step outside of yourself and address situations not from your own perspective and bias. Because at the end of the day, that in between space sets the tone for the routine in which you develop and exude externally, even though it's a process that happens internally. And there are 3 or 4 different aspects that I want to go into. One, how do you acknowledge that you're even going through a situation to where you need to be able to sit down and just process what is happening around you? And honestly, that's a topic or an aspect of this discussion that is it's difficult to address because it looks different for everybody, and you really won't know unless that person is like completely transparent in acknowledging their aspect of development and essentially really um, I wanted to really pose a question because I know for me, I'm still acknowledging the different levels of aspects of my development that I still have to process. And in trying to do that, there are also things currently happening externally that I have to process while processing what is the real acceptance and recognition that is happening around me internally. And honestly, quite frankly, it's not similar to, but sometimes it feels like you can be drowning in your own emotion and mental processing. And to be fair, it's it's really daunting sometimes to try to sit down and really be intentional about dissecting the things that are happening mentally. And honestly, not addressing the aspects of your reality that are popping up to you that are in need of your purposeful attention, it can be, how do I want to say or convey the importance of being still to address the things that are happening around you while also acknowledging the difficulty, at least for me, of being able to sit down and digest things individually. It's 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 difficult to balance because on one hand you have to do things that take care of your needs, whether that be trying to figure out how to get money to eat, trying to make sure you have a safe place over your head, especially if you have to create a safe space for yourself in the midst of chaos, while also trying to solidify and reemphasize what your soul wants you to do and balance that out with the materialistic responsibilities that are put on you, um, just standards or um, societal expectations. And I'm not here to say that it's not applicable for you to be able to balance all of those things around you. It's difficult, but it is possible. But in order for that possibility to be reality, you have to sit down, even in the midst of what's happening, and digest or process, quite frankly, what you want to do. Because how others want you to show up will be a reoccurrence that never really goes away unless you intentionally distance yourself or isolate yourself away. And there are some people that do that. You know, if you have to, and that's the best thing for you, then, you know, do what you do. But for me, that's not an option. And especially as I'm taking steps towards growth and the reality that I envision, it's going to be harder and harder for me to have moments to myself. And what I've learned is what is helpful is for me to have a space, a time, so that I can digest by myself without the extra voices or words, even if they are centered in intentional goodness or support. But it's still that outside noise. And I know for me, the silence has become so important because I'm surrounded by noise and movement that can be distracting if I don't take the time to feel myself, which is really what the processing is. It's for you to feel your emotions, understand that your emotions are valid. You don't have to overthink and try to make theorized explanations for why you feel the way that you do. You just have to digest it And that is something that some people push away or refuse to do because those emotions can be so powerful and they're intended to. That's the whole, at least my understanding of what emotions are supposed to be on a human level. You're supposed to be able to utilize your emotions to register what somebody else's actions or to reflect on or identify how somebody else's actions directly influence you. And the thing is, some people stop at half of the battle. Like some people feel their emotions and then just go. The processing adds at least a millisecond of a buffer. Because if somebody is willing to say, this made me angry, hold on, wait a minute, why? Even for 0.1 seconds, that pause, that welcoming of the question, it, even if in the moment you still respond like you would just instinctually or in alignment with things that you're trying to grow out of, that's okay. Like, you're gonna do that. It's expected. It's not necessarily a huge detriment. What is a detriment is not continuing to look for the answer or ask the questions. And that question being, okay, what am I processing? What am I understanding? What am I really feeling because of this situation or because of the response or feedback that somebody has given? And for me, I am continuously posing this question, even when I get shit wrong, because I'm human. And I know that and I acknowledge that. But when you're processing something, really the apparent acknowledgements and in-depth awareness goes out the window. And it's just your surface level actions and emotions and what you want to do with them from that point on. But that's not how I want to get to my next level. And I want to be able to enhance my own self practices so that I am actually reacting to a situation that causes for that extremity. Like I want to save my energy. Like, yeah, the processing that drains you, that takes it out of you, that takes it out of me. Like, especially if something not necessarily just frustrating, but like, even if it pissed me off, bro, and my actions are to just go blank, I'm trying to make it to where I can pause just a little bit longer before my mind takes over in that type of instinctual response. Because I don't want to go into that type of response unless I absolutely have to. And the situation, when it's really in front of you, it'll show you. Like, there are some situations where you can look back and you be like, that didn't cause for that. That didn't really cause for it. I just overreacted. Okay. I get it. But depending on how life is put in front of you, there are some situations where you be like, yeah, that was one of the moments. Like I had to. And there's a decision to where you have to evaluate what you are going to do. And I'm trying to host a conversation that is welcoming the processing. Because if I don't process something, man, when the context comes back to me, and it always does, no matter what happens, how God has removed me from something or has even kept me ingrained in another aspect of an environment that I didn't even expect to be in. But even with that being said, there is, well, not but, and with that being said, when that context comes back, because you never know the full story, and I've said this before, but it's so important to recognize that when you're processing, because even though your emotions are valid, there's something you don't know that is happening above and around you that you also have to include that in your process too. And I know for me, like, sometimes it's difficult to explain the actual process of how I process things, especially my emotions, because everybody is different. Everybody does not process things the same way. But the key at the end of the day is to be able to identify what is helpful for you and what is helpful for you to communicate to others too. Because the two are not synonymous. I don't have to say a word or explain myself to myself. Now I'm gonna have to break it down and assess and be like, hold on, wait a minute. Let's look at this. But that's my process. That's how I talk to myself. Even when I talk bad, it's still coming from a space of I have to process what I'm feeling in order to get through to the other end so that I can also process the fact that I may not have a full understanding of what is happening, but I'm acknowledging that while also acknowledging how this situation is affecting me. And because of that, it is helping me to acknowledge when I'm not breathing and allows me to regain the control over not just myself mentally, but my body physically and where my soul is in regards to my humanly body spiritually. And, sometimes the two, physically and mentally, they might be on board. You know what I'm saying? Let's do what we do. You know what I mean? But spiritually versus that human reality, like sometimes that spirit be saving things. Like, seriously. Like my soul will be so calm in the midst of like, some disappointing, disheartening bullshit. And my soul would just be like, yep, we knew it. It's okay. Keep going. and my internal body is like, what the fuck? No, we need to do something. We need to respond. We need to X, Y, Z, ABC. And it's like, so what are you going to do when you really need that energy? What are you going to do when the actual situation causes for it and you've expelled your energy in things that energy was not meant to be? And now you've paid it attention to where this was only supposed to be an indication of what this actually brings out of you, not necessarily what you need to respond to. And I've had to sit with that acknowledgement repeatedly because at the end of the day, like, that's the only way I can address my own insecurities and development and ways in which I need to continuously, or how I need to continuously center myself mentally. And one thing I do appreciate is the fact that when I do welcome processing, regardless of the situation, it also showcases to me how I deal with it subconsciously. And there might be actions to where we've gotten so used to having it in our routine or having the accessibility open to us, because that's a whole nother thing. Like having something or being able to do something, even though you may not need to do it, but you have the resources to. So because you have the resources to, you make the decision to do something that maybe you weren't supposed to. Maybe you just needed to sit and wait and just let it process and digest and reveal itself to you in other ways. But because that's not necessarily what your natural mind told you to do because of the surface level, now you're reacting and responding to something that you really didn't have to put your energy into. And that's what I want to welcome continuously to me, but definitely to the people that are listening and watching, because you have to understand your own process for you, or somebody is going to tell you. And they may have the best intentions. And honestly and truthfully, it's really hard to tell whether they do or don't if that person is not speaking to you from a mature, transparent level. And in order for you to be able to have that gift of discernment, or even just a growing skill of acknowledgement, you can't acknowledge anything in your processing of what is happening if you don't know your own self enough to identify your own steps of processing and call it out. Be transparent. Do I really need this thing to help me mentally filter through what is happening, whether it be to you or what have you? Or am I just leaning on this to help me get out of what I'm feeling emotionally and physically? And that's valid, but at the same time, do you really need it? Or do you just need a moment to where you can acknowledge your emotions, let it process, and then after you let it process, after you sit with it, then decide what is best for you, and not just doing it immediately when you feel it or think it? Like, these are questions that I have to ask myself continuously, because it's so easy, bro, especially if you have the resources to do something that you want to do. It ain't nothing to be like, all right, for sure. I work hard for it. So let me go ahead. I already know what's up. But at the end of the day, like, did you really? Because, yeah, you got the resources, but maybe those resources were meant for something different. But now you done spent it. And when you really needed it, you don't have it. And now you really fucked up because you thinking you just have nothing when really you had everything you needed. You just weren't managing it appropriately because you weren't managing or opening your own self up to identify your own process of how you process things personally, professionally, creatively. It all intertwines and still routes back to you. So if you're really looking for a development or alignment with the version of you that you aspire to grow into. I mean, don't get me wrong. Let's say who you are now is, who you envision to be. But is that vision really you, or is that influences that have, whether it be projected or just really, how can I say this? Someone isn't going to welcome processing if they don't have anything or don't recognize that there is anything to process within them, because it's an individual thing. So if you don't see anything wrong, then you're not going to do anything. You're just going to keep going, which is fine, which is okay if that's what you choose to do for you. But at the end of the day, my vision for myself doesn't center around just my own personal environment. In my vision, I know that there's a large mass of pressure surrounding the external expectations because of the intentionality that I'm putting in the steps that I am taking presently. And that's a blanketed statement. And, I feel iffy about getting into specifics because you can't tell everybody the visions that you see, even though when they're supposed to come out, they will. And you communicating that vision is a part of your own testimony and growth and development. Because if you really see it and you really plan on putting action behind it, it's always going to take time before it becomes or before it actualizes itself in reality. Which is why I'm trying to encourage processing, because if you don't have areas of growth in your life, I really just want to ask you, is it your life that you're really living? Because yes, there are societal expectations. There are real consequences to pursuing your dreams too early, seemingly, because you really, if you have the idea, the point is for you to do it, regardless of the timing that you feel is best, because it's about what your acknowledgement of God. They're supposed to have the final say on whether you execute or reserve your energy on something. So if you don't see anything to develop within you in comparison to the vision that you have for yourself, is that vision really something that has been given to you by a higher power that you recognize? Or is that a vision that has been adopted for you and you're just doing what has been conditioned in you to do? Because that causes for its own level of processing as well too. Like, you can't, I'm not going to say can't. If you are committed to your growth, there's always something for you to work on and to process, because there's something within your environment or within the purpose or a level of recognition, acceptance, and execution that you're supposed to have internally in order for you to understand what you're supposed to do next, so that you can stand in alignment with the divine vision that was given. But that all causes for development, self-recognition, And those things never, it's a lifestyle. It's not it's not like practice where you just go there physically 1 day out the week, 2 days out the week, and then repeat. Like, no, bro, like it's every time you breathe. Every time you breathe, that's supposed to be a welcoming opportunity for your processing. Because you as a human, every time you breathe, you're developing. That's what's ingrained in our DNA naturally. That's why we have scientific explanations of evolution. You can agree to disagree on whatever point, topic that come up to where you like, I don't know. That's cool. That's not the context of what I'm saying. The context of what I'm saying is if you are not acknowledging or evaluating you versus what is happening around you versus the vision that was actually given to you, if there is no connecting action between the three, you're not walking or you're not building your routine healthfully around the things that actually need your individualized personality or energy. And you're robbing yourself of moments that you may not even know are around you because you're not identifying them because you're not processing. So that's what I want to come here and talk about really with you is what are you doing? Are you recognizing your processing? Are you going through it respectfully? Like, really, be honest with yourself. Even if you don't feel like it and you feel like, bro, I'm just here today and really just taking in everything. And honestly, it's all bullshit, but okay. Process it. Process it. And process it in a way that you can recognize your own voice in it too. It's not about the people around you. Like, unless they're struggling in their own ways, they're going to be around the next day. And unless God don't give them the same grace, they're going to have another chance to evolve and convey themselves in the same ways that you do. So why not focus on you so that you can fill yourself up? Recognize the energy you're putting into that so that you can recognize how you're distributing that. So yeah, that's really the bulk of what I wanted to say or what I feel like I need to in this space. And honestly, again, I don't really know if this is helping anybody, but it's helping me because even though I have people around me that have my best interest and intentionalities, or at least understand, I understand their intentionalities. I know for myself, in order for me to process effectively, I have to process it for me. And I'm getting better at acknowledging what that processing means and how it is beneficial, and also what it is exposing that I need to continuously grow into. Because when I walk into my vision and it becomes reality, that pressure will still be real. And I want to save my energy, because once I get to that, then I will really look back on these times and say, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I took that extra zero point 0.1 seconds to process that. Because if I didn't, maybe the energy I would have expelled then would have negated the energy that I'm able to execute within now. So that's all I have to say. Um, be open to questioning yourself at the end of the day. Just pose the question, look for the answer, and be willing to accept the time in between so that you can process everything while the answer itself works its way to you. Sometimes it seems too slow. Trust me. I know. But the true indicator is how much you're willing to still get back up. Even if you're making the slip ups, are you willing to keep the same intentionality and get back up? Y'all can let me know. Drop it in the comments. I'll read them at some point for sure. But as always, I've been Dunlap to Connect, and y'all know I got to go, and I know you do too. So, hey, you're always welcome back for another episode. I see y'all. Peace.